The legends rarely tell the same story twice. This is just one of them. What if the first vampire was not a vampire at all? What if centuries before Dracula, before castles, before coffins, before the dead rose from their graves, ancient Greece already feared something that hunted in the dark? Not a beast, not a ghost, not a goddess, but something in between. Something that could become whatever it needed to become. A beautiful woman, a black dog, a mule, a shadow on an empty road. The Greeks called her Empusa, and according to some stories, she served the goddess Hecate herself, the mistress of witchcraft, the queen of ghosts, the guardian of crossroads. To understand Empusa, you first have to understand the world she came from. Ancient Greece was a world filled with gods, but it was also filled with things that were not gods. Spirits, phantoms, demons, creatures that lived between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The Greeks had many names for them. Some haunted houses, some followed armies, some lingered among graves, and some waited for lonely travelers. Empusa belonged to that last category. She was a creature of roads, of crossroads, of places where certainty ended. Because crossroads were dangerous places. They were places of decision, places of transition, places where the worlds of men and spirits could touch. And no goddess was more connected to such places than Hecate. Many ancient sources describe Empusa as one of her attendants, a spirit that followed her out of the darkness, a servant sent among mortals, a nightmare given purpose. Yet no one could quite agree on what Empusa really looked like. That is because Empusa was famous for one thing: she could change shape. One of the earliest surviving descriptions comes from the Greek playwright Aristophanes. In his comedy The Frogs, the god Dionysus travels toward the underworld. Along the way, his servant Xanthias suddenly sees something moving in the darkness. At first it appears as a bull, then a mule, then a beautiful woman, then a dog. Its shape changes again and again, as if reality itself cannot hold it still. Finally, Xanthias realizes what he is looking at: Empusa, a creature whose face burns with fire, a creature with a bronze leg, and another leg that ancient sources describe as belonging to a donkey, or in some versions, something even stranger. The details vary, the fear does not. Because what terrified the Greeks was not her appearance, it was the fact that she had no true appearance at all. How do you defend yourself against a thing that can become anything? How do you recognize a monster when the monster wears a face you trust? That question follows Empusa through every story about her. And over time, the stories became darker, much darker. By late antiquity, Empusa was no longer simply a frightening spirit. She had become a predator. And her preferred form was human, beautifully human. Ancient writers describe her appearing as a young woman, attractive, charming, irresistible. The kind of woman a lonely traveler might dream about. The kind of woman a young man would follow without hesitation. That was the trap. Because beauty was never her true form. It was bait, a disguise, a hunting strategy. The victim believed he had found companionship, perhaps even love. Instead, he had found Empusa. Some sources claim she fed upon flesh. Others say she drank blood. Others suggest she consumed the life force of her victims. The details change. The pattern remains. Seduction, consumption, death. Long before the vampire legends of Eastern Europe, long before the medieval succubus, ancient Greece already imagined a creature that lured humans through desire and destroyed them once they surrendered. This connection becomes even clearer in one of the most famous stories associated with Empusa. It appears in the writings of Philostratus. The story concerns Apollonius of Tyana, a philosopher, a mystic, a traveler, and one of the most mysterious figures of the ancient world. According to the story, one of Apollonius's students falls in love with a beautiful woman. She appears wealthy, elegant, perfect. Everything seems ideal. The young man is enchanted. A wedding is planned. A future is imagined. But Apollonius sees something that no one else notices. The woman is not human. The wealth surrounding her is an illusion. The luxury is an illusion. The future is an illusion. She is an Empusa. When confronted, the creature eventually confesses. She intended to consume the young man, to fatten him, to feed upon him, because she preferred the flesh and blood of young men. It is one of the oldest surviving stories that resembles the modern idea of a vampire, a beautiful predator, a supernatural seductress, a creature hiding death behind desire. Yet there is another strange detail about Empusa. Unlike many monsters, she had a weakness. Ancient sources claim that if a traveler recognized her and began shouting insults, she would flee. Not attack, not fight. Flee, screaming, shrieking like a ghost. Philostratus even describes Apollonius driving away an Empusa through mockery and abuse. The creature vanished into darkness, crying out as it escaped. It is a curious image. A demon that can deceive humans, a demon that can devour humans, yet one that cannot tolerate ridicule. Perhaps because fear was always her greatest weapon, and once fear disappeared, so did her power. Over time, Empusa became connected with other female spirits, Lamia, Mormo, Mormolycaea. All of them inhabited the darker corners of Greek imagination. Lamia was often blamed for stealing children. Mormo was used to frighten disobedient youngsters. Parents invoked their names the way later generations would speak of bogeymen. Eventually, these creatures began to merge. Ancient writers sometimes treated them as members of the same family. Different masks, different names, the same underlying fear. The fear that something inhuman could imitate humanity. Even the name Empusa became surrounded by mystery. The Byzantine encyclopedia known as the Suda records alternative names. Onokole, meaning donkey-legged. Oinopole, another obscure title whose meaning is debated. Some writers even suggested that Empusa and Hecate might sometimes be the same being. The boundaries became blurred, the mythology evolved, the stories changed. But Empusa survived, because she represented something timeless, not merely fear of monsters, fear of deception, fear of appearances, fear of trusting what should not be trusted. And perhaps that is why she still appears today, in books, films, games, modern fantasy, modern horror. The details change. The bronze leg is forgotten. The donkey leg disappears. The crossroads vanish. But the core remains. A beautiful face, a hidden predator, a promise concealing danger. The Greeks feared many things: war, disease, shipwrecks, the anger of the gods. Yet hidden among those fears was another. The fear that evil does not always look evil. Sometimes it looks beautiful. Sometimes it speaks softly. Sometimes it offers exactly what we have always wanted. And standing at the crossroads between desire and destruction was Empusa, the servant of Hecate, the shape-shifter of the night, the woman with the bronze leg, the forgotten ancestor of the vampire, and perhaps one of the oldest nightmares humanity ever created. This is Voices of Mimir, and this was Empusa.